Hello and welcome to episode 1348 of The Sleeper and the Bust. It is Monday, October 21st. I'm your host, Paul Sporer, joined this afternoon by Justin Mason. Justin, how are you doing as the running back of the San Francisco 49ers?
I feel like I'm a Hall of Famer, that's for sure.
Was that edited or a typo? Did they accidentally put Justin in there, or did someone edit that photo?
No,
or did
it was just a typo.
Okay, that's amazing. We're talking about Jordan Mason. I had not seen that. And then I was putzing around Twitter a little bit during the playoffs because still love getting hyped during a game on Twitter. I will say it's still good for that when you're watching a game with people getting gassed up. And I saw that. That's so funny. They misput his name there as Justin, and then you're stacked up with all these Hall of Famers. That's an amazing graphic.
I had so many people send it to me. Like it was
so good.
It was, and I mean it has been a thing since Jordan Mason came into the league. Whenever he has a big game, like all of a sudden,
you see Jay Mason.
Yeah, because he gets listed in the stat sheet as Jay Mason, and so people all the time will hit me up and be like, "Oh, look, and I live near San Francisco, so obviously it makes sense." It was pretty fun.
I like that.
I've been enjoying kind of some relaxing time, which is not something. This may be the longest I have gone without recording a podcast in 7 years.
It's been a minute.
So,
we literally just said, let's take some time. So we did.
Yeah.
Been enjoying the playoffs. Tigers run was amazing. I will say maybe would have been fun to share that a little bit more with you on the show, but I was having a blast. We were texting a bunch about it. It was an amazing run. I regret nothing. Obviously you want them to go as far as they, all the way, but what a season that was. The playoffs have been pretty great. I've really enjoyed them.
Amazing.
Look, it's two hated teams unless you're fans of them, and I think that's okay. I don't think that's a problem.
I mean, so I retweeted something Jessica Kleinschmidt tweeted out last night, and I haven't even responded to the replies to my retweet because there were quite a few, because people were like, "Oh, Astros are the most." She tweeted out that these are the two most hated teams in baseball, and a bunch of people were like, "Oh, the Astros are more hated," and I get that from a recent sense.
Yeah.
The Astros are more hated, I think, because of the 2017.
Sure.
2017.
2017.
2017.
Yeah, 2017 was the one that they won when it was really going on.
Yeah. So at the same time, I still think there's a historical context
that's what I was going to say.
That's outweighed. But
that hatred in the blood runs deep on these two organizations, way deeper than anything Houston.
I will say, at least in my lifetime, this is the most likable Yankees team I've ever seen.
100%. 100%. I was saying that a couple years ago with how many guys I liked. I remember when Bader got traded over. That was just another on top of several likable, fun guys that they've got on the squad. Yeah. So I'm with you there. And they also haven't been winning. So
yeah, exactly. They
I'm not jealous of them.
2009,
what the hell are they doing to be jealous of?
I will say too, so Dodgers fans don't just think I'm a Dodgers hater, even though I am a Dodgers hater in many regards. This is probably the most likable Dodgers team I've ever seen.
Great stars over there too. Fun, lovable guys.
As a Giants fan, I hate blue and white. I do. I'm not gonna sit here. I try not to.
You're obligated.
That affect, yeah, I try not to let that affect my analysis or anything. But people who've listened to podcasts know I hate the Dodgers. But how can you truly hate Shohei Ohtani and what he has done, even just in a Dodgers uniform, or Mookie Betts,
Freddie Freeman.
Who's
hating him?
Yes, yeah. There are plenty of reasons to hate the Dodgers as a Giants fan, but the team itself, they're really likable as well. So it's
kind of like hating the corporation Apple, but still loving your iPhone. Maybe, I don't know. Because I don't hate those players.
If you want to hate anything about this World Series, just hate that MLB allows organizations to punt their payroll to the point where these super teams exist. Right? This is not this is a dynasty.
Don't blame them.
Team, being too good because the other teams in the league suck.
Yeah, when you think about it,
go ahead. I'm sorry. Best teams in the World Series, and
exactly with
two mega
amazing
teams.
Star power.
Yeah,
insane star power. So if you care about the health of baseball, this is a check mark for that. I find a lot of that stuff to be overwrought of how much the game is always dying. Yes, this $11 billion industry is melting away. You know, I think that's always overstated and everything. But on the positive end, you cannot deny that this is the best case they could have gotten. It's international because of Shohei and Yamamoto. You know, I think Judge has even gone international. You got Soto, you got Betts. I mean, there's just so much star power. It will put baseball into the national landscape for, you know, nice little 10-day period there. And I do enjoy that.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Who you got? Who you picking?
Oh, man. I think that it's weird because I mean both these teams are stacked, but they both have massive flaws,
right? Which is crazy to say, given how stacked they are. Like there is obvious flaws.
I honestly think this is easily a game or a series that could go 7. I do think that both these teams. I do and I don't, because Game 7 would be like what, Friday night or something like that, or Saturday night in Arizona. Which would be fun to watch with everybody, but at the same time, like, takes away from what we're doing while we're there.
Agreed.
So
that's fair.
I kind of hope it just goes 6, and I hope that the Yankees win. I think the Dodgers are going to win. If I was betting on a team, I think I'm betting on the Dodgers here.
You're in line with the markets. The Yankees are the dog. I do also lean toward the Dodgers. I just think it's Shohei's year. It's a small margin. I can see it going either way, too. I just want a longer series. I agree with you on the Game 7 thing for our selfish reasons, because we'll be in Arizona. And, you know, I do want to focus on the event there. But if there is a Game 7, of course, we will be locked and loaded on that. And it'll be fun to watch with a bunch of baseball folks. I just hope we get great baseball, because it's been a wonderful playoff. The Guardians, man, you know, they came up short, but boy, did they provide some electricity. And especially for a fully neutral observer, of course, they threw some major stakes in my heart as a Tigers fan. But somebody that's just neutrally been watching the Guardians all playoff, how fun is that? If you're like somebody who jumps on a team when your team doesn't make it, if you chose the Guardians, those killer homers that they got against the Tigers and then the killer homers that they got against Cleveland, that was amazing. And I always talk about how much I love Tom Hamilton. Listening to him on those calls was awesome too. So it's been an electric playoff, even outside of the Tigers' success.
I mean, I don't know that there was a bad playoff series. Like,
no, I can't, because
every single series had something, and that is not something we usually get. And so to not only end up with,
can we finally shut up about not wanting home field? Not wanting the bye.
Yeah.
Please. It was always statistical noise that the ones, like, first off, actually, let me back up, because I'm a little peeved on this. We do have a topic that's fantasy related, but I'm a little peeved on this by my boy Brian Kenny. I love Brian Kenny. I'm a BK guy. Love his show. But he was talking about it today and, you know, saying like, we need to protect the 1 seeds. Are we protecting the 1 seeds enough? Well, there's no argument here. You get the bye. That is an undeniable good. Just because teams can win without it doesn't mean it's not good. They're protected enough. What more do they need? And the teams won this year. The playoffs are random. If you just want the 1 seeds to like make the World Series, then just put them all the way in the World Series. Just say everyone's fighting to face the 1 seed.
Because turn it back to 2 teams from each.
Because what's the point then? If you don't want volatility, don't do a playoff. That's my only thing. Because he was saying, oh yeah, you know, they made it in this year, which is great. Do we need to do more to protect? When he said to protect them, I'm like, they get the bye. The bye's enough, man. And every team will take the bye. Anytime you hear a player, you know, Trevor May, who just recently retired, streaming out there, all sorts of different player podcasts and all that. None of them say that they don't want the bye. They acknowledge that when you're hot and things are going, you'll take that vibe of just playing all the way through. But everyone wants the bye. You get healthier. You get to set your rotation. It's an undeniable good. We need to put that to rest. Hopefully this helps push against that tide of maybe you don't want the bye, because that's stupid.
No, because people forget. People forget all the time. Like, it's just like people have like
it's just such short-term memory.
Yeah.
So 2 years in a row, the 1 seeds got murked. Then maybe you just don't want to be the 1 seed. Okay, fine. Then play for second place and shit, or third place, I guess, since there's 2 teams that get a bye. And let me know how that works out.
Not only did both 1 seeds make it, like I mentioned before, these are 2 deeply flawed teams in certain regards.
Yes.
like the fact that like they were still the number 1 seeds and made it all the way in spite of their. I mean, the Dodgers have thrown what 2 or 3
500
games.
Yeah, two like full-on ones where it was the point from the jump, because they also covered this on today's MLB Now.
So beat up, like
exactly,
and they still won it, right? They like in part because they were able to do that bullpen game because they had that bye.
Yes, exactly.
To, like, have everybody be healthy and rested in
everyone
order
that
to, like, do that, like,
you know, at least all hands on deck there. They needed that extra time to get those healthy because they were already hemorrhaging dudes. And so big credit to them. And also I'm not a Dodgers fan, I don't care about them. STFU about the 2020 not being a real win. I just don't buy that either. That one also bothers me, framing it as like a fake win. The playoffs were longer.
It is a little.
It's not though. It's just not. The only way that holds merit is if you didn't think they'd make the playoffs in a full season.
I mean, of course, it's a real championship.
They're 43-17.
As a Giants fan,
I know you get to use it to undercut them. I understand that.
Absolutely.
But in your heart, you know that's disingenuous.
Wasn't the previous championship or the championship prior to that also a shortened season as well?
No, 88 was legit. Did they win in 81? Because 81 was a strike season. 81. And no one talks about that. Again, I'm just rehashing all of MLB Now right now, so I'll stop doing it. Let's get to our topic.
20 years from now, no one will call it.
You're right.
Like,
and again, it's okay to bring it up. You can say it was the COVID year, but if anything, at least say, yes, they didn't have to play as many regular season games, but they played the longest playoff ever. And we know how volatile it is.
They were still the best. Like
they were still far and away the best team.
They were the best team
far and away.
So
just give them their due.
As a Giants fan, I'm going to give them shit. But yeah, they were the best team in baseball. They won the championship. It's a real championship.
I can respect the fan.
They have
they got the piece of metal over there, and it still counts. All right, let's get into some fantasy baseball. You can tell I'm fired up right now. But we're going to talk about some big fall-offs. 2024 fall-offs here. Now, fall-off doesn't inherently mean that they were bad players. It means they fell off from a high level to this level. So it's obviously a negative spin here, but we're going to talk about a few guys who still ended up putting up great seasons despite these big drops. So what I did was take WRC plus, weighted runs created plus, and a solid catch-all, and just the biggest drops from last year to this year, where you had to have 400 plate appearances in both seasons. So a decent enough sample there so that you played in both years. And what were these drops? And wouldn't you know, we had 2 teams with 4 registrants on here. And we're going to start with the reigning champs and maybe get a little insight into why they didn't even make the playoffs in the follow-up year. Now, if we did anything on pitching, you'd also find out that their pitching was hampered. So it wasn't just that, but Texas had some issues this year with regression, World Series hangover, call it whatever you want. But 4 key guys. Notice that they're all up the middle too. I don't know how much Garcia still plays center, but at least last year in 2023, they were all up the middle guys. Jonah Heim, minus 35 points of WRC plus to 70. So that's a massive drop. Adolis García, minus 34, down to 92. Seager lost 31 points, but he was still 140, right? So he went from God to like God's brother, because that's amazing. 140 is still unbelievably great, but that's more lost production, and these other guys weren't making it up either. And then Marcus Semien went from 126 to 99, so a 27-point drop for him, where it's like you're still doing things, but that hurts. 4 guys, 3 up the middle, and then 1 corner outfielder this year, because again, Garcia did move off of center, but 4 key guys dropping like that. Do you think that is the number one reason that Texas didn't make the playoffs this year?
I mean, I think in 2023, everything came together for Texas. It reminds me a lot of like the Giants, like 2021 season to 2022, where everything went right for the Giants in 2021.
Was that the 100-something win team?
109 or 107 game win season. Like, and then everything, like, but it was like there was a lot of luck involved, right? Like, They were very, very lucky. And then the following season, it was the exact opposite, right? And nothing went their way.
Everything that could have gone right went the opposite way. And I think Texas really did feel that this year.
I feel like last year, everything went right. Everything was perfect. There was just a great confluence of events coming together at the same time. And I think this year, it was the exact opposite. They definitely did not do as well in terms of like injury luck. They definitely they had a lot of guys who underperformed what they probably should have done in terms of the metrics. Like I do think like almost all of these guys that we're going to talk about in Heim, Garcia, Seager, and Semien, like I think they're all going to bounce back. Maybe not to the levels of 2023, but I think they're all going to be better than they were this last season. So, like, I mean, starting with Heim.
Yeah, let's get into him.
The BABIP drop of 40 points, over 40 points, like, is massive. Like, we're talking about a guy.
Is it that simple, right? Sometimes, right? Because we're always careful to not just do that, but that doesn't mean it's never the answer. And is it maybe that simple with Heim that the BABIP regressed hard, but it did go back to a level that he was at? So then the question would then be, if you look at his ledger, the 2023 289 BABIP for Jonah Heim is a huge standout. The 246 this year is in line with his career numbers. So did he just have the one great season, or is there a world where he can claw back some of that and maybe live in the 270s with his BABIP?
Yeah, I think he's probably more of a 260, 270-ish BABIP guy. I mean, he made really good contact within the zone this year. Like it was his best in-zone contact rate since coming to Texas, right? So we're excluding the 2020 insanity of a 96% zone contact while he was in Oakland.
And 41 plate appearances that year.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I think he's gonna be better. Like the majority of the rest of his underlying numbers tell me he's going to be better. Will he be as good as he was in 2023? I don't think so. I do think that he's probably more of like a 245-ish kind of hitter. But with decent power and a guy who plays quite a bit. I mean, even in this kind of down season, he almost made 500 plate appearances again as a primary catcher. He had 13 games at DH this year. So, like, I think he's going to be a volume dude that is going to be underpriced in the market. I think a lot of people are going to be looking at 2023 as the outlier. And I think it is in some regards, but I think he's going to be a very, very safe C2 for 2025 and will be a guy that I'm targeting.
Yeah, I think Jonah Heim can definitely get some of that love back, down from a 105 to a 70, get back into the 90s somewhere. I don't even necessarily need him to be over 100 with his WRC plus, because if he's playing every day on a team in Texas that I expect to be decent, because even this year they weren't a crap team. It wasn't like I wanted nobody from their squad. They went 78 and 84. It wasn't good. I think there'll be something like the reverse of that, 84, 78 next year. I think Heim could be interesting because I think the price plummets. I really think he completely craters, and that's why I'm going to buy Heim. Let's get to Adolis García. It only took me 15 years, but I was right. No, it took a few years. I'm not taking any victory lap because this year I just basically laid off. I was like, fine, he'll just keep being whatever. But the things kind of came home to roost a bit. His BABIP dropped. The walk gains that he had last year that I never believed in, which were the biggest reason that I looked so dumb last year. He's all of a sudden being patient. He went back down to 7%. Still 25 homers and 11 steals, right? So this is one of those ones where it's like, don't tell me Adolis García killed your season. No, he didn't. He didn't quite deliver on what you got from 2023, but he didn't kill your season either. What do we do now at age 32? Off a 224, 25, 85, and 11 season for Adolis García.
Yeah, the lack of patience that we saw from him is a bit concerning. I mean, the drop.
But in line with pre-2023, let me interject that because he just went back down to his levels.
And that is the concerning part, is like we saw some real growth in the approach in 2023 that he, as soon as he started to struggle, he just went away from it.
Started hacking again. Yep.
And he never really came back to it. And the problem with that, like, I don't necessarily have a problem with that because I think he is a good enough pure hitter in a lot of regards to overcome that and still give you fantasy goodness, right? He may not like give you batting average, again. But like he still got power and speed. The problem is a Bruce Bochy team doesn't run. And that takes a lot of that value away from a guy like Adolis García. When other people are like popping off with 20, 30 stolen bases everywhere, and you're getting 9 or 10 from Adolis García, like that is a bit concerning, and it really lowers his upside, because all of a sudden you're going from a guy that, in 2022, was a 4-category guy, all 4 counting categories, and the batting average was fine. It wasn't bad.
Mm-hmm.
And now you're looking at a guy who is maybe a 3-category performer with the batting average potentially being a drain. That is concerning me. To me, it's going to be all about price. If his price drops too far, I'll take the gamble, because once you see the skill be there, like, it's always attainable again. I don't want to say like he's going to be the guy who can walk again.
He could pop 30 again. Adolis García could come right back to 30, 15, and I don't think I'd blink. Maybe not the 15, because again, Bochy doesn't run a ton, and Garcia himself will be 32 coming off of 20 total stolen bases these last 2 years. But 30-10 would not surprise me. What price point are you paying for that from Adolis García, though?
I don't know yet. I mean,
that's a fair answer.
You and I were kind of talking prior to the show. Like, I've not done my projections yet. I think a lot of it will depend on where he projects out. And to be quite honest, he won't be one of the first people I project out, because I'll be doing middle infield first.
We do have our one price point from the poll hitter. Pick 142 for Adolis García.
That is fine. I'm fine with that. Like, if you're getting a guy like him around 150, like, I think there's nothing but upside there.
Yeah, I don't think that's objectionable. I still don't know if I'm paying it, but I'm not like, oh, how could you possibly do that? No, if you believe in the power, and you know that's the thing of it is, there's fluctuations. Looks like a downtrend because he's going to be 32, and like even myself as pretty much a hater of his, not the biggest fan of Adolis García, I don't want to get caught up in being like, oh well, I was always nervous about him, and now he's having a bad year, and now I can just cross him off. No, I don't think that's the case. I think it's a guy that kind of had pretty normal fluctuation of this sort of skill profile. The power outage was there a bit, 4% dip in the barrel rate. Hard hit rates down a little, but nothing too crazy. Like, there are elements here where the power can easily still be pretty great around pick 150. So yeah, I think Adolis García is definitely still somebody to pay attention to and see where that price point lands. What about Seager and Semien? Any concerns with either? Again, Seager dropped from literally the top tier to the second tier. It barely went down. 140. I know it's a 30-point dip, but a 140 WRC plus is still amazing. Still always about the health with him. I know you've never been a big fan of his because of that health. That's fair. So you're probably not changing your assessment there. You're not more confident in him, I don't imagine. And so what about Semien? Seager, Semien, where you at? And Semien, I think, just kind of had a negative variance here too. I'm not too worried about him.
I'm not worried about Seager at all. If anything, if there's a dip at all, I'm buying. He missed some time, but he still hit 530 plate appearances. I was never going to project him for 600 plus, concerning his injury history. But he was elite when he was in there, and
he only got 3 fewer than last year. 3 fewer plate appearances. He was just so good last year. In that short volume. Like, might just be one of these guys that's 500 to 550, but God tier when he does it for Seager.
I mean, all the underlying numbers say he was just as good, if not better in some regards, than last season.
Crazy, right?
Yes, there was. I think last year was really influenced by his BABIP. He had a 340 BABIP, which helped kind of push up that batting average. But like this year, he got a little bit unlucky in the BABIP part. 291 when he's a career 317 guy.
Yeah,
his XBA was 292. If his batting average is 292, are we even having this conversation, or is he just back being a stud that's going to miss 30?
No, because he wouldn't have hit the threshold. He wouldn't have dropped enough, right? I'm trying to get the guys that were dropping like 20 plus points. So I don't think he would have dropped enough. So I think you're 100% right there. And then Semien, I think there's a little bit of a foundational difference where we said that Seager is great on a per plate appearance basis, whereas Semien is definitely a volume guy. And he got his volume again this year, 718 plate appearances. I am going to boil this one down to the BABIP, 41-point dip. That's the only thing I see here that really fell off. A little maybe under it for a bit. His infield fly rate did jump a healthy bit from 8% to 14. He had a spike before. Actually, it was in the COVID year, so I don't know how much we would put stock into that. It went from 9 to 16, then back down to 9. He did have some other jumps into the double digits. In fact, from 16 to 17, he went from 7 to 10%. So, I mean, we've seen fluctuations there. Again, I can't find anything here to be upset about Semien with. And I think at age 34, his price will come down. I think Seager's still going to be a top 15 to 20 guy. I think Semien will dip a little bit. Because people are going to start being concerned about the age. He went 147 in the Deadpool hitter pod. That's insane to me. I'll pay that all day.
I mean,
I'd still pay a top 100 pick for Semien, I think.
He has 4 straight seasons. And if you don't include the 2020 season because it was shortened,
right?
He actually has
fake World Series too.
6 straight seasons of 700 or more plate appearances.
It's crazy.
What more do you want? All he does is play. I will say this though. I think the dead end ball hurt him. I think that's where the power drop.
That's fair. That's where the drop came.
And we don't know what baseball will do with a ball. So
true. We never know though. That's the thing.
Yeah.
We never know.
So I do think, and I think, going back to Heim, I think the dead end ball hurt him too. Right.
Mm-hmm. Because these are guys. And go ahead, say your theory on that about the middling power.
Yeah, I think the middling power guys get hurt the worst, right? The guys who are kind of fence scrape home run hitters, when the ball gets deadened like this, they're the ones who are gonna, because obviously a guy like Seager, a guy like Judge, a guy like Ohtani, they're hitting the ball so fucking hard, it's going over the fence. It doesn't really.
They might get an occasional wall scraper, but they don't live off of them. And wall scraper doesn't necessarily mean literally 1 to 2 feet, but that 7 to 12 feet range, whatever. Actually, the home run tracker used to be an amazing website that had all these great classifications, just enoughs, no doubters and all that. I loved that. But the just enough there is what we're talking about, where those guys that don't quite dominate the power. So when you're losing 7 to 12 feet consistently, they're losing 4, 5, 6, 7 homers in a given year.
Because when you have the prodigious power like a guy like Seager or a guy like Judge or Ohtani, when those balls don't go over the fence because the ball's dead, they're hitting the fence, right?
Right. They're line driving into the fence.
They're turning into doubles, right?
Yes.
Whereas a guy like Heim and a guy like Semien, those are turning into flyouts.
Flyouts on the track, flyouts just in front of the track, 100%. So no, I think that's right.
I do think a guy like Semien gets hurt a little bit by that. But at the end of the day, you're talking about a guy who influences all the categories. I do think the batting average comes back up. His XBA was 257, which, is right in line with his career average of 255. I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to be Marcus Semien again, maybe with a few less home runs. But this is a guy we were taking a second, third round that you're now going to be able to get in the 10th round. Sign me up. I'll take him in the 9th round every day. And if
that lasts,
it probably
will be on every single one of my teams. I don't think so either. Remember, this draft, this is a 1 data point draft. It's not even the completion of it yet. I'll see if I can get the rest of that data, because I do believe they finished it. But it's the Deadpool Hitter Pod by Rob DiPietro. Had a lot of industry friends of ours, that participated in this. But it was also in the throes of September. And I want to say he was struggling during that period too. So I think there might have been some influence of some negative Semien air out there. Because I can't envision him being a 142 ADP consistently. But again, if he is, I'm all for it. Yeah, he really sputtered to the finish line. 618 in August, 692 OPS in September for Semien. So I think there was a little sour taste. Once we kind of reflect, I think at least jumps back up into the 120s. And I'm still paying that every day, by the way. I have no problem with that for Marcus Semien. All right, let's get to our other team with 4. Atlanta. Another team that they made the playoffs, but it was a grind, right? Now, I don't know if it was a grind so much because of these dips that we're going to get into versus more of the guys that they just kept losing. I think they maybe could have sustained these dips if they had gotten a little bit better injury luck. But you get 4 stars, actually, I would say 2 superstars and then 2 solid role players, all 4 dropping substantially, and all these injuries. And then you're left, fighting tooth and nail to get into the playoffs. And so that's ended up going to San Diego and taking the loss there. So they had Matt Olson drop 44 points to 117. He's the one who was still good, but he didn't carry the team. Ozzie Albies, minus 29 to 95 and some missed time. Orlando Arcia was a sneaky all-star last year. He dropped 28 points to just 72 WRC plus. And your boy Jared Kelenic dropped 23 points to 86. So this was a pretty substantial dip. Let's start with the 2 stars, Olson and Albies. What was your outlook on them this year? Did anything change that has you dropping them significantly for next year?
Before I jump into that, we do have an ADP already. That's how insane.
Oh, let's go.
We already have an ADP. Marcus Semien 110. So
okay, big thanks to the Deadpool crew for giving us that, for having that for the last month or so, but now we have an actual ADP. Let's go.
Yeah, I literally just checked while you were talking. I was like, well, if their draft is done, then it should be on the ADP sheet, and we have 4 completed drafts, it looks like.
I love you freaks already, so much.
Yeah, I do too. I'm not going to be one of them this year.
I used to be. I'm a recovered freak right now. The only reason I'm in a draft is because Nick made me do it. I had to do it for the podcast, so I did do a 12-team draft. But anyway, continue.
Coming in on Olson, I was definitely down on him comparatively speaking. I just felt like 54 home runs is an insane number.
What a run.
Also, like, if you look at what he has done historically over kind of the course of his career in terms of batting average, it jumps around. Like, even just looking at like the last 4 years, 271, 240, 283, and then this year 247. He's just a guy that you just don't know what his batting average is going to project out to be year to year. And so I tend to rule on the side of caution in that regard. So I think I can't remember exactly what I had him projected for off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure I had him projected for around his career average, which is like 255. So
he hit 283 in 2023 for Matt Olson, just for context there.
So I was not in on Matt Olson this year. There's nothing wrong with what Matt Olson did. Like, I think he, this is kind of who he is. He's a 30+ home run hitter. Yes, he didn't quite get to 30 this year. He'll probably get back to it next year.
He grinded for that too. Remember, like, he had a brutal start and had to grind back up to do what he ended up doing for you.
So, I think he's a guy that I'm not super worried about in terms of where he's gonna like end up next season. But I also want people to like look at this as like, hey, this is a player that isn't as bankable as maybe other stars, right? Like, that we know he's going to be good. He's going to deliver power, but he doesn't deliver any speed. We don't know what batting average he's going to deliver. I think Atlanta as a whole will be better offensively next year. So, like, I think the runs and RBIs will go back to being, close to elite, if not elite. But yeah, I do think there is a little bit more volatility. And when you're talking about a guy who could potentially be, at best a 4-category player, but, maybe even a 3-category player, because of the batting average potential downside, like, he probably shouldn't have been going anywhere close to the
top 20.
Top of the second round where he was going. He should have been going where I kind of projected him to go, which was like 3rd, 4th round.
So now Olson drops to 34 in these 4 drafts here. How's that hitting your ear?
Still a little too high.
I thought you might say that. Okay, jump down to pick 52. That's where our boy Albies is going. And I say our boy because we've been longtime fans here. I mentioned that Eno put me on back in his rookie year. I did not know who Ozzie Albies was. Eno told me about him. I instantly fell in love. I think the first night I watched him, he hit like 2 triples. I was like, I love this guy. It's amazing. And been a super fan ever since. We both advocated for him regularly. Tough year. 99 games, that's a big part of the drop-off. So when I tell you 10 and 8 on the homers and steals, it's because didn't play anywhere near a full season. 251, 303, 404 slash line, though, is a dip down too. It's looking a little bit more like 2022, which he also missed a bunch of times. 64 games that year. Where do we currently stand on Albies? He'll only be 28 next year, but 2 injury-riddled seasons out of the last 3. The one in the middle was brilliant, though. 33-13 with 109 ribs and a great slash line from Albies in 2023. So you've got the whole mix there. Where do you come out with him? And is that pick 52 hitting your ear right to go back to the well on our boy Albies?
Has anybody ever seen Ozzie Albies and Alex Rios together in the same room?
Do you think he's reincarnated Alex Rios?
Yeah. Alex Rios isn't dead, but yeah, sure.
A shortened version too, because Alex Rios is like 6'8".
Yeah. I think this is really interesting because I want to be like, hey, listen, there's still a ton of upside. We seen it very, very recently. And he's just, got hit by the
Then just say that. But don't say negative things.
At what point do we start to give him the injury prone tag, right? Like, this is a guy that even in his healthy seasons has been banged up.
Right. Because of the way he plays. A hair on fire type of guy, right?
And he's small, like smaller guys, like it can be difficult, when you're playing day in, day out.
Wouldn't know. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, exactly, right?
I'm tall. I'm very small, though. I'm
thin, so for me, it comes down to price. And the problem is, if you look at the early ADP, which we now have,
spicy, dude. I was actually really surprised by
52 is really high.
Now, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Is it simply a commentary on the shittiness of second base? Because you've got Mookie, who's triple eligible, going at 12. Ketel Marte at 33. Our boy Albies at 52. And then down to 68 for Altuve. Although right as I say that, I would just wait for Altuve. I love Albies, but I would just wait for Altuve. And then you got Semien at 110, who I was just saying, I'm going to take everywhere. So
the fact Matt McLean is the second baseman and he missed the entire season, like it does tell you. But like I think there's some really interesting guys at second base. Maybe they're not at the top, but like
that doesn't mean that that doesn't invalidate the lack of depth, though. I agree with you but that's when you find the interesting guys is because nobody stands out that you really want, right? Like the best guy is triple.
You shouldn't use the lack of depth to push up guys who aren't.
I agree,
safe,
but I'm asking if that's why he's there. Do you think that's why Albies is there?
It absolutely is.
Okay.
People, you shouldn't fall into that trap, right?
I agree too. Because if you told me Bryson Stott was going to have the same year at 100 picks cheaper, I wouldn't bat an eye at that. And he has shortstop. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I cut you off on that.
No, I mean, but like you can get, Gleyber Torres is going outside the top 200. Mikhail Garcia going outside the top 200. Colt Keith going outside the top 240. Like
Colt Keith, we're back in on him. We're back in on him.
Don't get me wrong. Like, to me, this screams get Mookie Betts in the first round or just wait. Just I love Ketel Marte, but are we pretending like Ketel Marte's injury issues in the past aren't going to still potentially be around?
Exactly. It's old heads. Actually, 4 old heads after that. Marte, Albies. Albies isn't old, excuse me. He's 28. But veteran, so mileage, let's say. Because it's Marte, Albies, Altuve, Semien. So 3 oldies, meaning 30 plus. And then Albies, who has mileage but is still young. Maybe it is just that he's 28, though, too. Because that is pretty alluring there when you look at that 4-pack.
Yeah.
Like, to take the 28-year-old switch hitter, although I don't know how appealing that is. He might stop switch hitting, I think, because he really doesn't do well from one of the sides. I forget which one. But yeah, I think I'm 100% with you that when I get deeper and I see somebody like Matt McLain, who I do like, I don't know if I'm paying 123 coming off of a 0 season, but I do like him. And then Stott and Xavier Edwards and even like an Andres Jimenez and Gleyber at pick 200, like you were saying. Tommy Edman, NLCS superstar, if he's healthy going into next year, isn't he appealing as a 3-position option for the Dodgers? Unless he's a free agent, I'm not sure on that. And then you mentioned Colt Keith. Brandon Lau just had a great season. So yeah, I'm actually liking the deep end of the pool of second base. I'm not pushing Albies up. I'm pretty concerned. I don't like that price. I don't like that.
Yeah, I don't either.
What about the 2 lower guys, Arcia and Kelenic? If you bought into them this year, it's like, okay, that's fine. And their lack of panning out certainly wasn't something that you couldn't make up for. So now we go forward, and they'll be draft. I don't want to say, actually, I'm looking at the ADP. They will be draft afterthoughts. They're both going outside the top 400. Let's start with Kelenic because he's your boy. Are you guys still hanging? He's picked 420. Are you paying that? I mean, it's free. Your favorite price, your favorite label for a price. Are you paying that next year for Kelenic?
Probably, because it's, maybe not in a DC, but yeah, in a place where I can drop him, sure, why not? Like, I still think there's upside.
He's 25.
He's 25. Why not? Yeah, he plays in a great park on a great team. Like it's like the problem is the team is gonna be like once they're healthy, like they're gonna be good enough where they don't need to play him. So
True.
But I think we'll
have that assumes no injuries next year. Too.
Yeah, and you can drop him if that's the case, right? Like,
yes.
So like, yeah, especially in 12-team leagues, but even in 15-team leagues, yeah, like put him on the end of my bench and kind of see what happens. Because I do still believe that there is a ton of talent there. It just has yet to come to fruition, and guys develop at different rates. So
they do.
I'm not out on Kelenic. Am I like going to be taking him in the 13th or 14th round? Absolutely not. Like this is a guy you're taking in, a mid-20s round.
Yeah, he's in the flyer zone now, which is the spot where I'm definitely open to taking Kelenic too, because I haven't been as interested in him. But at that price point, 420, yes, I can take a shot on somebody who went 15-7 with a 231. Like that's not the end of the world on a 25-year-old. Now Arcia, the market didn't really buy into him, right? So he didn't really burn anybody. We all saw this coming a mile away, but now he's buried. He was in the 350s last year, 474 now. Do you think they address this problem, or do they run it back a third year with Arcia? There's no way they do that, right?
I mean, Atlanta? They could. They have him very, very cheaply.
It is a very good contract,
and he's still a very good defensive player. He got 600 plate appearances. Like, do I think he's going to get 600 again? Maybe not, but I think he's getting 5 something. He's a very good defensive player. I think that has value. So I think
they see that as a saving spot.
Accumulator.
Yeah. I think you've sold me on the contract here, too. It's $2 million. They see this as a spot where for $2 million, I mean, up the middle, because what's Albies is still making peanuts relative. So,
$5 million a
year. So they're paying $7 million for a Keystone combo that can legitimately give them, probably at a low end 4 WAR, if you're assuming a measure of health. And at a high end, obviously, much more than that, which is probably whatever 2023 looked like for Albies in 2024 last year. So, 2.5 wins was what Arcia was able to do last year. That's probably the high end, something in the 2s with his WAR. But Albies can obviously go crazy. So maybe they do stay committed there. And in which case, I think Arcia is the kind of guy I take into DC, somebody who I think is locked in for a good chunk of PT because of his glove, who has a modicum of a bat. He has 17 homers each of the last 2 years. I think he's an ideal sort of DC play and exactly the kind of type that we're talking about. When people are taking all these flashy prospects who've never played in the majors yet, and you take boring ass Orlando Arcia, I think that's a sharp pick at pick 471. So I'm actually pretty interested in him in DCs.
Yeah, I am as well.
All right, so that's Atlanta and Texas. They each had 4. Now we just get into some names by themselves, not with any teammates. J.P. Crawford was another kind of big breakout year in a similar vein to Arcia's, right? Defense leads the profile, and there was expectations for some hitting back in the day, but maybe those had faded, and then boom, nice big season. That's what 2023 was. There was skepticism on how much he could hold it. A lot of it was built off of a great OBP and AL best 94 walks, but he did rip 19 homers too. That was plus 13 from 2022 and plus 10 over his previous career high for JP Crawford. Unfortunately, Justin, he lost 10 of those homers down to 9 this year. Big drop in playing time as well, almost 200 plate appearances, from 266 to 202 in the average, and from 380 to 304, the walks just weren't there. All told, it was a 47-point dip, our biggest single dropper here, down to an 89 WRC plus. What do we make of JP Crawford now going into his age 30 season with Seattle next year?
I mean, the majority of that big dip in playing time was injury, right? He missed, I think, a month of the season. But I think that Crawford is very much like Orlando Arcia. So I'm glad you kind of put these guys kind of back to back. He is a defensive specialist that's an accumulator. I definitely think that last year 2023 was kind of the high watermark, and he's just going to go back to being kind of a deep league, a DC kind of accumulator that you get really late in the draft and you put in and you go, okay, if my Corey Seager goes down, I can plug and play with JP Crawford here for a little while. But he's not a guy that you're drafting in really any other format.
Totally agree. We just don't need to give him much more time than that, because I completely agree. He spiked a nice year, and if you benefited from it, that's awesome. Those are fun years. That's what makes baseball great, is those kind of spike years, but I really think that's all it was. Yeah. I don't even think if he had stayed healthy, he would have necessarily been that much better. I think he would have hit better than 202, because I'll also allow the injury to cover for some of the fall off too, because we never know exactly like how much it impacted. But, you know, even if you give him last 2023's plate appearances, JP Crawford was still only pacing for like 13 homers. So it still would have been a 6-homer drop, which when you only hit 19, that's a big deal. So I agree. DC only type of guy. And the market, like Arcia, did not overrate him last year. And similarly this year, they've pushed him down to 395, and that's fine. I'd probably just wait for Arcia, but same diff. This one, not so much. This was a big one. This was a stinger for folks. Luis Robert. He fell apart. He dropped 45 points off of his WRC plus down to an 84 for the season. Obviously was part of the worst team ever. Nothing went right there. I am of the belief that this team will be quite a bit better than next year, not just because how could you possibly be worse, but also because I think their system is producing some interesting talent. Does that give you interest in maybe drafting Robert next year? He still put up 14 and 23 in 100 games. That's not bad, but he struck out a career high 33% of the time. He doesn't walk much, only a 6% rate. Luis Robert's going to be 27, still a White Sox, and he goes around pick 80. How does that make you feel after this tough year for Luis Robert Jr.? Excuse me.
I'm very torn on Luis Robert Jr. In some regards, I go like there's still massive upside. Like there's just so much upside. The problem is there's been a ton of injuries with that upside. And so like you have to give him the injury prone tag. And there's been a pretty sharp skills decline in terms of his in zone contact over the course of the last 2 years. You can't even just chalk it up to like, hey, you know, this was just an off year for the entire organization. We're talking about a guy who the last 2 seasons, he's been at pretty much 81% zone contact, whereas in 2022, he was at 87. In 2023, he was at 85. Like, that's a pretty sharp decline from league average to well below league average in zone contact. And if he can't make that kind of in zone contact and he's not walking, like the numbers are going to suffer quite a bit. And
can I interrupt you? I'm sorry. I think you're doing a profile on 2022 Javi Baez on accident. Are you?
Yeah.
Oh, you are talking about Luis Robert. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought for sure you had just fallen back into a Javi Baez, because it sounds exactly like Javi Baez's situation.
And that is the fear. And like Baez had a much longer peak.
True, because he stayed healthier. So that's kind of unlucky on Robert's part.
No, but is it unlucky, right?
Well,
skills decline
fair
faster
enough.
because he can't stay healthy. So I don't think this is a bad ADP. I think it still represents a ton of upside, because this is a guy who, I mean, has been a borderline first round pick before.
Right. But I don't hate 80. If you buy in, I don't buy in personally. I can see the case, and I can see wanting to take pick 80 on a guy like this. This is a guy I could miss on because I don't have the stomach for the volatility of Robert.
I just don't know how you even project 400 plate appearances at this point. And so then you add in the decline in skills, and I'm not going to be in it pick 80 more than likely either. You know, maybe I take a dart throw somewhere if he drops in a draft. Like he drops outside the top 100. I could see myself like throwing a dart. But I mean, at this point, he hasn't even gone below 89 in a draft. Now,
no, the market recognizes the talent.
Yeah. So like that to me, when you've got guys that so far, like here's another guy, right? Like going behind him in drafts, not by a lot, but going behind him in drafts is Royce Lewis, who has probably just as much injury issues, if not way more, right?
Right.
I will take Royce Lewis every day of the week.
I will take his profile, right? Because, in the uncertainty of their health, I'm in the bag for Lewis, folks. So you're not going to be surprised to hear that. But 79 versus 82, I'm just going to take Lewis and trust his profile more. And because we're hoping for 500 plate appearances from either, of course.
Yeah.
So in that scenario, yes, it's Lewis easily for me. It's not even close.
Yeah, no, it's not even close for me either. So, like even like I'm just like going farther down the list, like Brenton Doyle.
I'd take Doyle.
I'm gonna take the Wyatt Langford. I'm gonna take like
I'm taking Langford. I'm taking. Well, it depends where he lands, but I'm taking Teo. You think the Dodgers bring him back?
I think they do.
I love Spear.
You know what the crazy thing is? They have so much money available because they have like pushed all these contracts out that they can give him like a 5 or a 6 year contract, and it won't run into the Ohtani one.
Yeah, they can overpay him a little bit.
Yeah.
And kind of, because corner outfield, 32, he doesn't have the best plate skills. I love him as a player. I love Teo. So I kind of hope he gets overpaid.
Because he's 32, they don't need to give him 5 years.
3 years. Yeah. 360?
60? Yeah.
Yeah. Hit him with a 360. I mean, because he made 24 this year, or 23 and a half. So you are coming down on the AAV, but you're getting 3 years. I think he would take 360 to stay in
375, LA. I think
I would also do that. Yeah, I would gladly do either of those with him, understanding that one of those years is probably going to be rotten. Hopefully one's amazing, and then hopefully that third one is toward my favor.
You're not paying like half of your guys yet.
Exactly. No, I totally agree. They can afford to splurge on Teo there, just to put a random note about him. But yeah, with Robert, it's one of these ones where I respect the price point, but I don't necessarily do it myself. It's just because of my comfort level, but I don't think it's out of pocket at all. Let's dip down a good bit because we're just going in order now with the individual players of their WRC Plus drop. So we're going to a completely different profile here with Yandy Díaz. Nowhere near the fantasy upside of somebody like Luis Robert Jr., but also nowhere near the fantasy cost, of course. He had that dream season last year in 2023. By the way, I never really know when to stop calling 2024 last year. Usually I wait till the calendar change, but I'll try to be specific where I think there might be some confusion. So right now, as I say last year, I'm referring to 2023 consistently in October, November. Once we get December and that, it starts to get a little dicey. But for now, last year's 2023. He hit 22 homers, career high. Everyone's like, finally, the power's here for Yandy Díaz. He's a god. He also hit 330 with it. It was an amazing year. The funny thing was, it was a fast start that kind of tailed off, at least with the power. Yeah. And the power did not stay this year. It dropped down to 14, which is still tied for his second best ever. And he hit 281. So again, this was a good year for Yandy Díaz, a 120 WRC plus. It just happened to constitute a 43-point drop in WRC plus. So he is on our list of fall-offs here, but it's not like you are mad at him for the year that he gave you. Do you find this profile to be worth pick 245, which is where he's going in these 4 drafts for Yandy Díaz? He was 180s to 200s last year.
Sure. I mean, I think it just really depends on what your team context is, to your roster construction at that point, right? Do you need batting average? Do you need, because that's what Yandy Díaz gives you. He's not going to give you a ton of power. He's going to give you a lot of plate appearances that, sometimes will translate into runs and RBIs depending on the success of the team. The problem is like, how successful is this team going to be next year?
Yeah. I
tend to think they're going to be better than they were, but maybe just not as good as they've been in the past. So I'm fine with the price. He's a boring deep league guy that can really help your batting average if you've taken some batting average risk early on. But it's really a team construct question as opposed to hey, how much do you really like Yandy Díaz? I don't think we're seeing 20 plus homers again. I just don't think that is who Yandy Díaz is.
I don't really either. I wasn't planning for it this year. He was picked 150, by the way. My league happened to be 180s, so I was taking that as his general ADP, but someone got a bargain on him. But so he's picked 150s last year, and Yandy Díaz has moved down to 245. I think that's an overcorrection, but I'll take it. And I think he's a great DC pick because batting average is remarkably difficult to find late, as we often discuss. So I think Yandy Díaz in the 240s, boring. Nobody's oohing and ahhing when you take totally it. Fine. I'm in on a DC for Yandy for sure. Let's talk about his new teammate, who I did have some high hopes for when he first got there. He hit homers in the first 2 games. I didn't Ian Happ it. I didn't say, I knew this was he's awesome. But I was like, I think maybe Christopher Morel could have a nice big second half with them. No, that was false. He kind of did his best work early and then was kind of terrible with them. He actually had a 57 OPS plus in his Tampa Bay sample. Bottom line, did not go as well after the trade, but they love the player. They think his bat to ball skills are incredible. They're not concerned about the defense. They're going to figure it out. There's real pop here to tap into. But it ended up being a 39-point dip from last year's breakout with 26 homers and a 121 WRC plus. He dropped down to an 82 WRC plus, but still had 21 homers and actually had 2 more steals than he did. Here's the kicker, though. He needed about 45 more games to do that. So you can't just look at the raw totals, 26-6 versus 21-8, and be like, oh, he wasn't that different. No, when you need, 190 more plate appearances to do that, it's a drop. So what do we make of Christopher Morel, both from the standpoint of falling off after the trade? Do you think that that's anything or just a blip? And then how do you feel about him next year, first full year with Tampa Bay under their regime?
You want to hear one of the craziest parts of that WRC plus drop for Christopher Morel from when he went? So when you were talking about him and I was kind of bringing up his page and stuff like that, I sorted the game log by when I thought he was traded, because I was just thinking, he was probably traded on the deadline day, right? So I just went to August 1st. If you just take off those first 2 games of him in Tampa Bay.
Oh, because he was traded on the 29th, right?
Yeah. So his first game was the 30th. If you actually take off the 30th and the 31st from his stat line, his WRC plus drops 11 points from 59 in Tampa Bay to 48. That's how much those first couple of games actually helped him.
He hit homers in the first 2, and you're like, this is going to be amazing with them. Nope. So what happened? Do you think there's anything to make from that, or is that just a bad run for Morel?
I mean,
it's pretty catastrophic.
I'm gonna say something that a lot of people are gonna get angry with me. But this is who Christopher Morel is. Not to say he will be this bad the entire rest of his career.
I think I get what you're saying.
This is the range of outcomes for a guy like Christopher Morel. And what I was yelling about in preseason on Christopher Morel, which was like the plate or the contact skills, the in zone contact skills are so bad.
I don't like the plate skills either, by the way. But he improved them this year. But coming into the year, I hated his plate skills for Morel.
Yeah. But the in zone contact skills are just atrocious. Like they're really, really bad. Like they are among the worst in baseball. And until that changes, the risk on Christopher Morel is he is not a major leaguer. So like I see the upside, and there is a ton of upside because he's got a lot of speed, and he's got a lot of power in the bat, but he's a poor defender, which the Rays will care about at some point.
Yes, they'll do their best to hide him, and then if it becomes untenable,
they moved him in the outfield. They DH'd him. They pinch hit him a lot, especially towards the end of the season. But I mean, at the end of the day, you're talking about a guy who has defensive risk and offensive risk. Where's he going in? I don't even know where he's going.
Pick 247 right after Yandy.
I think that's too high. Like
with a decent range though. The low end is 300s. 314 is the low end in these 4 drafts. Are you getting in there at the low end?
Yeah, 314 feels better, but like you're still talking about. No, actually, I think 314 is right.
You got Joe Adele going
there.
Yeah,
you've got like Andy Paez going there.
There's risk there. Yep, I love Paez, but there's risk.
Hoskins, you're the 3-4 outside top 300. I think you're okay. Maybe even outside of the top 275, but even that I feel like then you're going do I want to take a gamble on Evan Carter or do I want to take a gamble on Morel? And I just
Carter
think
versus Morel is an interesting,
Carter doesn't have the upside that Morel does, but I think
maybe not in power, but he's
I think in the end that I think Carter's safer than Morel is.
I think so too.
I think I'd rather go there.
Yeah. So, Carter said he played through some shit this year.
And here's the thing, Morel's one of these guys, if he all of a sudden gets some good pub in the offseason or starts hitting bombs in spring training,
it's over.
All of a sudden people will jump him up.
Yes.
In the same way that we saw other guys get jumped up huge in spring
There's certain players
every other season
where people are looking for a reason.
Yeah.
Right. I want to buy in. give me a sign, give me something in spring, give me 4 homers in your first 12 games, and I'll jump in. And I think Morel falls in that class
it
of
will
player.
all be about strikeouts, right? Like for me, like
Right.
if like he could hit 7 spring home runs, but if he's still striking out at a 30% clip, there's no way I'm touching him.
Especially with a 7% walk rate.
Yeah.
You know, but I liked the improvements. The thing was with Chicago, 25% Ks, 11% walk. That's workable. He had 18 homers, 7 steals with him. It was 7 for 12, so they need to figure out like when he should run. But you know, the raw speed was there, and he had a 92 WRC plus. You're like, okay, that's a foundation. Tampa Bay is going to extract the extra out of that. That he's going to put up a 120 WRC plus with them. This is what I'm thinking when they get him, and then he hits the first 2 homers, and you're like, oh my God, this is definitely going to happen right away. And obviously came crashing down, but I'm still intrigued by the 26-year-old. I agree. Give me something outside of pick 300 because I did look there. You know that you do still have some more guys in that 275 to 299 range that I would prefer, including like a Matt Wallner. But once you get out of the 300s or into the 300s, I do like him. What about this next guy who's probably like more of a second base version of Morel, Nolan Gorman? I mean, he doesn't really run, but just in terms of that power, but with volatile plate skills that you don't know what to make of, he dropped 31 points down to an 87. How did we feel about Nolan Gorman's season and what he might do next year?
I mean, I think Nolan Gorman is Chris Morel in a different uniform, right? Like he's just a guy that really struggles to make in zone contact, and he was sent down, right? Like this is when I talk about like Morel's like the bottom end of the profile could be like getting sent down to AAA, not being a major league player. Like we saw this with Nolan Gorman, you know, like, and he started off, I want to say he started off the season.
I thought so too, because I thought it looked like he was like having a breakout, and then all of a sudden you look up and he's getting sent out. Yeah, he had 10 homers in the first 2 months, 16 through June. Yeah. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and so and then just kind of fell apart. But like these are the things that can happen when you have a guy, and I think with Gorman it's even worse because like he tends to be really better on one side, you know, versus one side than the other, right? Like so like he becomes big a strong side platoon. Yeah, like he becomes a big strong like, you know, strong side platoon dude. But then when he starts struggling there too, like all of a sudden like now he goes from like being difficult to use because he's a platoon guy to being impossible to use. So until I see Gorman change something with the contact skills, I'm probably out. I mean, he'll be cheap enough in drafts, like in DCs, where you might want to just take, you know, the gamble, because right now he's going pick 462. Like, yeah, like especially
the price to buy, sure.
Yeah, like that's actually fine price to buy, but like I also think that there is just so much risk that he is not a major league player at this point.
Yes, and there's a lot of reason for that price, right? Yeah. Like you can be interested in a guy at his price, but understand that he is down there for a reason. So the upside isn't just like endless with somebody like Nolan Gorman. The same stuff that happened this year could happen. He was pacing for almost 40 homers through his first 67 games, and then just kind of craved. Now, I must point out that during that time, the rest of the skills were not there. He was hitting 202, 278, 437. So it was like power all or nothing. Yeah. And then those chickens came home to roost. He was also on pace for 230 strikeouts at that point. So that check came due. He couldn't pay it. He got sent out to AAA. So we'll keep tabs on Gorman, though. He's young enough to still improve, but he looks like your kind of cookie cutter, all or nothing power guy that how he kind of responds to this season will determine if he can be the next Jock Peterson or just going to be the next pile of 900 platoon guys that have a blip and then fade out. What about Jeimer Candelario? Guy I was definitely excited about going to Cincinnati. It was a sneak signing. Turns out they did end up needing him. Remember, we were like surprised that they were signing offense because like, come on, you're bleeding over with extra offensive players. You need some pitching. Well, injuries hit them and they ended up needing him. He didn't really pan out, though. 112 games with 20 homers and just a 225, 279, 429 slash line for Candelario. A 31-point dip in WRC plus down to 87. The exact same dip as Nolan Gorman. So what do we make of Jeimer Candelario?
So I'd love to be able to sit here and take a victory lap on Candelario because I definitely was down on him comparatively, at least to you. But I think comparatively to a lot of people. I don't want to do that, though, because I think you can chalk up at least some of this regression to injury, right? Like he only played, I think, 112 games. And he still hit 20 home runs. So like, if we get him to like 135, 140 games, like that's a lot more home runs than we
gotta feel good about that. Yeah.
Yeah. You would feel very, very good about that. Right. I will say that the in zone contact rate was down. And so I think like if the power does kind of become better in a healthy season in Cincinnati, like I don't know that the batting average is going to be a ton better than it was. Maybe it comes up a little bit because the BABIP was down, but I don't mind Candelario at all, especially, let's see, where is he gone? Candelario's gone pick 346.
Oh,
we've talked about how bad first base is.
I'm paying that all day.
I'm paying that too. Like I have no problem paying that price. Like even like his min pick right now is 286. Like I don't think that's bad.
No,
I don't know if I'm going to pay quite that high. I'm sure you will. Because
I would. Yeah, I'm still in on Candy. 31, but like still in Cincy. Sign me up.
At even if he was going at 286, like that's virtually the ADP of Nathaniel Lowe. Is Nathaniel Lowe better than Candelario at this point? I don't know that he is. And if he is, it's not substantially. No. So like I think Candelario's price is going to make him really, really intriguing. I just don't think we're ever going to see like the massive breakout that some people were calling for coming into.
That's fair.
124.
That's fair. He might just kind of keep putting up 20-something homer seasons.
Yeah.
Decent batting average. Like I think he can at least get back to last year's 251, if not better. So yeah, I'm interested. Got to stay healthy though, because now you got 2 out of the last 3 seasons with over 20 games missed.
I think he's a 230 hitter. So I think that's maybe where we kind of disagree a little bit. But I think he could be a 25 plus homer guy with a 230 batting average. And if that Cincinnati lineup ever actually comes together the way it should,
right,
like, there's a lot of runs and RBI potential there. So like I do think that after pick 3 something like that's kind of a steal. So I'm totally fine with where he's going. I will be in. But yeah, I don't expect like a massive like season for Candelario at any point.
No, keep expectations in check for Candelario, and you should not be disappointed at that price point. All right, we got a couple more guys here. Let's talk Cody Bellinger. He's another one of these guys that dipped and had a significant drop of 27 points, but to a level that was still plus. You're not looking at your 109 WRC plus from Cody Bellinger and thinking, oh man, this was a complete, worthless meltdown of a season. But it still didn't quite go as you might have expected if you were really bought in on him, because he went 20-20 the year before, 26-20 with a 307 average, good for a 136 WRC plus. 18-9 with a 266 this year, and he had matching game totals, 130 in each season, so you can't even say it was a volume play. Exactly the same plate skills. Homer to fly ball dipped 5 points from 14 to 9, and then a 319 to 287 BABIP drop. Is it as simple as that sort of variation or variance rather, or is there something more here with Cody Bellinger that gives you any pause for next year?
I think the BABIP drop shouldn't be something that we go to in this situation. His 287 BABIP is pretty much right in line with his career.
Yeah, 287 to 319 for me is just not going to be something that I'm going to make too much of.
Well, and I think the 319 is the outlier. It's not the 287. Mm-hmm. So, I think he's probably a 260, 270-ish kind of hitter. I do, the fact that he played a lot of the season with injury and missed a lot of time because of injury should be concerning because of his injury past, but this was like finger issues and leg issues. Like I'm not as worried about, because it's not the shoulder that was the thing that kind of derailed, his early part of his career.
Yeah, and he had a 2-year lull dealing with that shoulder, to the point where we thought Cody Bellinger might be literally cooked.
Yeah.
And so, I agree. That's good to point that out. Not all injuries created equally. Some knick-knack injuries, not going to bother me as much as something if it were the shoulder. So coming back at age 29 next year, still with the Cubbies, he's going to be looking at a pick around 124.
I
don't think I hate that price.
I don't hate that.
You don't like that? You wanted a bigger discount.
I wanted a bigger discount. Like, I think that price is fine. I just really thought I'd get a bigger discount.
I hate when the market doesn't quit a guy that I want them. I was like, overreact. Come on. But no,
Yeah,
I
like
agree. Like he was 71 last year, and this is down to 124. Like that's a fair drop. I was hoping it was gonna be like 150 something.
yeah, that's what I was hoping for too. So like I don't have a problem with it.
Stupid sharp market.
Yeah, like then one of the nice things too is he's going to be eligible at first and in the outfield again. Gotta love that, especially like we were saying, like first base is not as deep as it's been in the past. So yeah, no, I love Bellinger. I'm going to be back in on him. Interested to see if he opts out or not.
Yes, that'll be really interesting. What's your take? What's your guess right now, if you had to guess?
I think he sticks with the Cubs one more year.
Okay.
Just
because he can opt out after every year, right?
Yeah, he can opt out next year too. So I think he sticks with the Cubs one more year and tries to get things on. Especially because there has been a lot of talk that this may be a down kind of market because of all the teams dealing with issues around the regional sports,
the television
going
stuff.
broke.
Yeah,
that there aren't going to be a lot of teams that are going to be massive buyers here. I think he will probably stick in Chicago for a year and then try to reestablish his market for another big contract next year.
Okay. I think that's totally fair with Cody Bellinger staying around for another year. And like I said, that price, it is fair, but I do agree with you. I can't think of the player. There was a player that I targeted last year that I was like, why did the market not overreact on him more? I really wanted him to go down, and I can't remember who it was. But so that makes the story really shitty. But let's move on to JD Martinez, who clock keeps ticking. Father Time says, I'm going to keep pushing forward. Yet another one that the drop did not take him below average, but it was a fall. So JD Martinez with the Mets this year did lose 27 points down to a 108. So you're still getting a plus bat, but you were dealing obviously with injury issues. There was sometimes playing time. At least that's what we saw here in the playoffs. I am kind of curious, like, wait, what? He's not listed on their Mets anymore because is he a free agent?
He's a free agent, yeah.
God, they kicked him off their roster resource page the day after. Let the ink dry on the freaking.
No, man, Jason's fast, dude. Like,
I mean, he is so good and so quick.
Yeah.
I had to go type him in. Anyway, sorry. So from 135 to 108, that's a pretty big dip. He went 1669 this year. And you know what's really funny is he did compared to 103 last year, and he did it in 7 more games. He was so unbelievable last year, JD Martinez was. He'll be 37. Is this like the Nelson Cruz, David Ortiz situation where even though he did come down, you still want to keep buying the plus bat, or are you getting out before he really sinks? How do you feel about JD Martinez for next year?
Here's the hard part is there's a lot of guys who are DH eligible that are just better. Like, like when we had the David Ortiz and Nelson Cruz kind of years, there weren't those guys, right?
Right.
That's, we've got Ozuna, we've got Ohtani, we've got a number of guys.
Rook still has outfield, right? Rooker?
I don't think he does actually.
I thought he did, but that would be just another one though. That would just further your point, to be honest.
So like, to me, like, and I mean, there has been skills degradation. So Rooker will not be eligible in leagues where it's 20 games, but if it's 10, he will be eligible in the outfield.
Okay.
So
there you go.
Yeah, there's been skills degradation. I do think he can be decent, and I think he's not a bad DC pick. But I don't know that you're talking about a 37-year-old that's been dealing with injuries. I don't even know where he's going to end.
That's what I was going to say. We don't know where JD Martinez is even going to be.
Part of like David Ortiz and Nelson Cruz is you always knew they were going to be on a team, right? Like,
yes.
Ortiz was always going to be in Boston. Cruz, even when he bounced around towards the end of his career, like you always knew he was going to get a contract. But like, how many teams want to give a 38-year-old, or I guess he'll be 37-year-old DH who's got degrading skills? Like,
and he's a righty, so you're probably thinking short side.
He waited till like the start of the season to sign this year. Now we got a regional sports, contract issues that are going to be holding other teams back. Like, is he really going to get? Like, there's a real chance
he's going to be a minor league signing.
Yeah,
I think he's going to be like a minor league signing. JD Martinez. He only made 12 this year.
Like that, yeah. So
no.
Like,
and to your point, the market is not drafting him. He is pick 594. He didn't even go in one of the drafts. Based on everything you just said, I'm going to feel like you pretty much agree with that for JD Martinez. right? Yeah. So I think that's fair. One of my favorites, absolute favorite player. One of my absolute favorite players when he was with Detroit. I carried on my interest in him, Boston, LA, New York, rooting for him. But I agree. I just don't think you want to take a guy like this who could feasibly retire on you too. If you're doing DCs right now, that would be the worst for him to just hang it up. And then you got a dead spot before the winter even comes, let alone before spring training even starts. So yeah, I'm not drafting JD Martinez until the spring. And even then, it's a TBD situation. One last guy here, Keibert Ruiz. Keibert. I still don't really understand 100% know. I've heard key bear. I've seen people put the emojis of the key and the bear. I've seen all the different things, y'all, but I haven't seen anything universal. In fact, even here on Baseball Reference, I got Keibert with D at the end. So I don't know. We'll go with Keibert. We'll go with what's on Baseball Reference right now. Keibert Ruiz. Supposed to be a heavy contact guy who you kind of get some sneaky batting average from out of catcher. Well, that did not come to fruition this year, as that was a big part of his fall off, and he lost 23 points down to a 71 WRC plus with that interesting Nats team. That said, I'm not out. 27 years old next year. I still think the contact is there. I mean, he only had an 11% K rate, only up 1 point from last year, but the BABIP went down from 263 to 232, and that's a career low. I do think we're ending with one here where you just blame it all on that. I don't think it's much more than that for Ruiz. He is dependent on it, though, so it could happen again, but I'm willing to bet that he gets back closer to the 256 to be exact, career mark of BABIP for Ruiz. And he's also hit double-digit homers last 2 years, 18 and 13. I think Ruiz is a fine C2 who's kind of boring, but still has some upside. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that. I do think a lot of the issues are BABIP. Influence. I will say though that he's another one of these guys that I think because he doesn't produce power,
he's way too expensive.
Oh, is it?
Never mind. 221. That feels high.
Is it? I mean, yeah. I mean, it probably is.
I bet. Because so here, real quick.
That puts him as a catcher 14.
Yeah. So in a 15-teamer, a C1, and a 12-teamer C2. Austin Wells going right ahead of him at 213. Then Connor Wong, Gabriel Moreno, and Sean Murphy in the 240, 250s range.
Give me Sean
Bo Naylor. What's that?
Give me Sean Murphy.
Yeah, I don't think I'm taking Ruiz at 221. I don't even think that's egregious.
Your boy David Fry going pick 329. Like up. I'll
no love for him off of his huge breakout. By the way, is he still catcher eligible? I don't know if these eligibilities are updated. Okay, he did play 23 games there, so he is eligible. So yeah, I would just take too many other guys. It's not even that I'm out on Ruiz as a player, as somebody who couldn't hit like 260 with 15 homers, which is pretty useful. But I just want so many other guys. I'll take Moreno, who has a similar profile where there's not much power, but you kind of believe in the batting, or at least I believe in the batting average for Moreno. I'd rather take him, I think.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
I just don't see Ruiz being worth the 221.
I do think there is a big drop off in catcher this year.
Yes, there is. Are you seeing it from the Alvarez to the Wells part, right?
I was gonna say,
or even before Alvarez,
Langoliers to the Langoliers to the Alvarez. Yeah.
What's the difference between those two?
I mean, Langoliers has shown he can actually do it for a full season.
Yeah, I don't know. I think they're the same guy. So I kind of have them together. I mean, the market has them, 20 picks apart. It's 2 years in a row now.
Probably thought the same guy.
But 2 years in a row, to your point about Langoliers, 2 years in a row, putting up 20-something homers, playing every day, doing some real things. Alvarez only got 100 games this year. Did hit 25 homers last year. So he's only done it for the one. That's fair. But he also is just 23.
Aaron is talking about Austin Wells. I do like Austin Wells' price. I like that.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm on Wells over Murphy. Yeah. And Wells is going right before Ruiz at 213. I like Wells. And then after Ruiz, I like Murphy, Moreno, probably even Jeffers.
I like Wells over Alvarez, personally.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
So then you're going to take that discount then. So then you're definitely passing Alvarez at 151 to get Wells at 200 or 2. He's 213, but you could take him a little earlier just to secure him. Yeah, I'm cool with that. Yeah. I think catcher does have a big drop off, like you're saying, but that second pool, like if you don't get anybody in that Langoliers and up group, then I'm just waiting. or I'll add Wells there too, because I'm with you on the Wells hype. But then after that, I'm just waiting. And if I just get stuck with Heim and Fry, okay, fine.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
All right, there we go. Bunch of fallers, 4 from 2 different teams, and then what was that? 9 others there. So pretty good group. A lot of guys we can still go back to the well on, but some that we gotta kind of push away from because their price didn't drop as much, or we're just not as confident in their skills. But it kind of shows you that fluctuation from year to year with baseball. It sometimes it's hard to remember that guys can have sharp ups and downs year to year and still be great players. Like it's just so difficult to deal with. You never know where that variance is going to lie, and that's why you try to take the most stable skill profiles, and that's why you're so big on the contact, right? Guys that make consistent contact, and if they can pair it with some power, they're going to keep a steadier floor. Notice a lot of these guys have contact issues, or in the case when they're not like Robert or Gorman with the contact issues, they're contact dependent. So it still came back to the BABIP even for those guys too, but just in a different way where they need all those hits to kind of keep getting through the infield. And some years it's just not going to happen. And you're going to be Yandy Díaz dropping 40 points off of your WRC plus. So anyway, really enjoyed the chat. Glad to be back. We're going to be doing like 1-2 a week for another couple weeks. And then we'll be back in November to the multiples per week guaranteed type vibe. So we'll probably have another one later this week, maybe on Friday. Maybe do some pitcher talk, because I'm very close to releasing at least something, little appetizer, maybe a top 100, maybe just a top 50, maybe just a little top 50 biddy to let some people enjoy that. But anyway, Justin, great talking with you. We'll be back, let's say Friday, and we'll pivot if we need to go earlier than that. But anyway, have a great week. I'll talk to you then.
Take it easy.